Carmelo Anthony's interview was very interesting to say quite the least. Right off the rip, it almost seemed like he was begging for a job in the NBA. It seemed like he was trying to state his case. I know generally by his reaction and what he said, "You never see me up here doing stuff like this." He was really trying to rewrite the narrative of him being a coach killer, a team killer, and some of the unfair criticism that he was getting. Some people felt like he was money hungry, and when he said that I don't play for a farewell tour, I play basically for the love of the game and stuff like that. That really hit home for me because that kind of dispels the myth that he's so egocentric that he never loved the game. The fact that the trainer Chris Brickley was willing to put his own neck on the line and say like it doesn't make sense for Melo not to be on the team, because that could hurt Chris's tenure as a trainer. People could say, well, your credibility is shot because you're coming to the defense of a guy only because you're training him. And when Chris said on the Breakfast Club, like, hey, I'm saying this is not nothing Melo's really telling me. This is just something that I feel personally. These are all my words. That goes to the credibility that helps out Melo. The interview with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN First Take, it was a good interview, but there were certain things that I didn't like necessarily. One of the things I really didn't like and really upset me, the fact that Stephen A. kept saying, you have friends like D. Wade, LeBron James, Chris Paul. Why aren't you on the team? If those guys are elite players and this, that, and the third, why aren't you on the team? And the first thought that came to my mind was Stephen A. Listen to this, man. They're not GMs. They're star players. Yeah, they could kind of give suggestions, they can give hints or whatever the case is. But unless LeBron James is on the Cleveland Cavaliers, which the Cleveland Cavaliers were one of the few teams that let the inmates run the asylum. Even David Griffin said he felt miserable being a general manager in Cleveland because he had to acquiesce to everything LeBron asked. Teams aren't going to make decisions just because they star a player. He said, oh, go get this guy. You get this guy right now. It doesn't necessarily work like that. I felt like Stephen A. was essentially trying to allude to Melo by saying this, like, allude to this. Why aren't you using your friends? Why aren't your friends coming to your defense more? Why aren't your friends making sure you have a guaranteed roster spot? Like, Carmelo, for some reason, was a charity case that his friends don't want to touch. So essentially what Stephen A. Smith came across to me by saying all that was, your friends are leaving you out to dry, so they're saying that they got your back, but really in tune, they don't have your back because you're not on the team. They could get you on the team. I think that narrative or those questions in that way were not the way to go in that interview. But got some revelations in the interview where Melo said he was really gonna go to the Bulls. And when everybody wanted Melo out of New York, which Stephen A. Smith was in it, Michael K., Mike Lupica, all those guys on the radio, if these are high people that cover New York sports in general, when they were saying we want Melo out and everything, Melo wanted to stay. He ended up staying. And that just goes, and he said that he stayed due to the promise of everything that was said to him and how he came to management and he said, man, what are we going to do to rectify this whole situation in New York? How are we going to compete with guys? So that was a nice revelation to find out that, it necessarily wasn't all about the money. He felt at home. He felt like this is where he belonged in New York. And a lot of things transpired. Melo he didn't even throw Mike D'Antoni under the bus. He didn't throw Mike D'Antoni's defensive coach under the bus. Those guys were gunning for Melo from the jump, from New York. And then when he went to Houston, those are the same coaches that went from New York to Houston and really kind of put a damper in Melo's career. Even you saw Mike D'Antoni did the Stephon Marbury's career. So, it was Melo is really a G for not really throwing D'Antoni under the bus because D'Antoni has done some things to people's careers. And what's worse about that is he has quit on teams. He quit on the Knicks. He quit on the Lakers before he was going to get fired from the Lakers. So that just goes to show you how tight-lipped, and how Melo didn't really even go into real depth about certain things that were done to him. And, he went into depth about how the Rockets got rid of him after 10 games. He said it was deeper than basketball. And that was a theme that kept coming up in his interview. It's deeper than basketball. It's deeper than basketball. It's deeper than basketball. And that's the thing that I don't think that many people are going to come across with Melo or really understand him, because even in his interview, he still felt kind of guarded. But he still dropped what was his truth, how he felt about things and stuff like that. It really is deeper than basketball with Melo, because it's a persona thing. It's a will we like you kind of thing, for the reason why he's not playing in an NBA team. He said it hurt his pride to know that out of 30 teams, he could have made a 15 roster spot. Melo on any team is better than at least 5 guys on that team. And there's no disrespect to anybody. You look at Portland, Melo's better than the Ennis Canner. If you look at OKC, he's better than 10 of those guys on the roster. For him not to be on a roster in the NBA is criminal. And it's not because he went to the stands and fought like a Steven Jackson. It's not because he's in the locker room stirring it up. It's not because he's cussing out the coach or choking out the coach like a Latrell Sprewell. All it is because people don't like him. You know what I'm saying? He clarified the fact, he's like, he does get a bad rap. And of course he does, because people don't like him. That's all it boils down to. Why does Patrick Ewing not have a head coaching job? It's not because he hasn't coached in the college ranks. It's not because he hasn't paid his dues as a assistant head coach. It's because people don't like Patrick Ewing. Therefore, he has never had a head coaching gig when all these other guys have. A lot of guys that aren't even qualified. One of the key things that he indicated, which was, because Stephen A. went to a lot of topics, which I love. He said, you took a lot of max money when you could have positioned yourself to go to Miami and stuff like that. He was like, when we talked about going to Miami, because I remember this, Melo took an extension. He said it was just an idea. It wasn't necessarily like a clear-cut plan. So now when you're looking back and you hear that, and then you hear Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, they planned it. It was like, did they leave Melo out of the planning? So to me, the whole interview was centered around saying, did your boys basically leave you out to dry? And that's one thing I just really didn't like about that interview, like I said before. But overall, you got to see some things about Melo that people didn't really even know. People don't even know, Melo wasn't causing drama in the locker room. People don't know that Melo was the first to go to the coaches, go to the GMs. He went to Daryl Morey to say, hey, how can we make this work? And he essentially got cut in the process. But it wasn't like he sat back and didn't approach anybody and talk about what was going on. It's just essentially, and we just got to be honest with the whole situation. He's getting blackballed. And, his interview was just basically to come out to say, I'm getting blackballed. I did everything that in my power to help. He said he went to Billy Donovan and said, hey, how can I help? What do you need from me? He said he went to the Rockets coaching staff. He went to the general manager. What can I do? So he put himself out there, and essentially he got rejected. And that was the same thing with kind of like Allen Iverson, when he didn't want to take a role off the bench or whatever, and the media was asking him about it. But here's the thing that I think is the problem with Allen Iverson and players like Carmelo Anthony. Nobody is willing to approach him man-to-man, approach those guys man-to-man and say, hey, I need you to come off the bench. I know this might not be good for a good role for you or whatever the case is, but I need you off the bench. And this sucks, of course, I know, because you're a starter, but I need you off the bench because you're going to help us win a championship. What they did was did a bait and switch. Melo, we want you in OKC. Melo, we want you in Houston. We want you to be a focal point to help us win a championship. You might not necessarily be the first or second option, but you're definitely going to start. You're going to be an important piece of the table. Melo, from all his accounts in the interview, he gets to the place, and they're saying, well, guess what? We don't need you anymore. Or what we thought is not what it is. And then they let the media parade the ideas of coming off the bench. they let all that come up like that. That was the key point, the key centerpiece I saw in the whole entire interview. Nobody was willing to talk to Melo man to man because they were scared. I don't know if they thought that he was too hood, if they couldn't talk to him because of his attitude, or they were gonna get their ass. Get beat up. I don't know if that was a key factor, but nobody came to him straight up man to man and said, "Hey, look, I need you off the bench. You're important. Your bench role is gonna be hell of important. You're gonna be our Vinny Microwave Johnson," and that never happened. So overall, like it is what it is. Like I don't think, to me, this just put another nail in the coffin because when him talking about everything and how everything went and stuff like that, I feel like he's not gonna get a job. I feel like him begging and putting this on display and not keeping his mouth shut about everything. And he don't get it twisted. He didn't beg, but people might perceive it as him begging for a job. This interview might seal a nail in the coffin for Melo because it's it won't change people's perception about him. It won't change the image that GMs have about him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the way that he allocates himself, the way that he carries himself. People just feel like he's not approachable. That's why there's like a whole bunch of, and I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna just keep it funky. Nobody in the NBA stinks, but compared to Melo, there's like at least 150 bums that are in the league compared to him that's not in the league who could play better than all 100 or over 150 players, and he's just not getting a shot because of his persona. His persona is essentially why he's not in the league, and that's kind of crazy because they can't really tell you. He never gave you a scenario where he did something detrimental to a team why that's why he's not on the team. There was never any stories like Melo punched somebody, Melo doesn't practice, like none of that. So that's sad in itself, within itself. But it was a really interesting interview, and I'm glad he actually said something because you can let everybody tell you a story, but sometimes we just need to hear it from you directly. What's going on? What happened? And I feel like we got that somewhat because I know there's some things that he held back, especially about D'Antoni. Who's Junction? Where Who's Means Hoopla? Like, comment, and subscribe.